So we're continuing today in Mishna Yomi. We find ourselves in Moed Katan, Perek Gimel, Mishnah is Beis through Gimel. Chapter 3, Mishnah is 2 through 3. Mishnah Beis says as follows, Ve'elu mechabsin b'moed. So remember again, as we spoke about, under normal circumstances, halach l'bais, you're not allowed to launder your clothing on Chalamayid. The reason for that is because of a concern that if we allow you to launder on Chalamayid, you may come to intentionally leave the laundering of the clothing until Chalamayid, because you figure you'll have more time until then, and then a person enters into the Yom Tiv in a compromised state. So in order to avoid that, Chazal said you can't go ahead and launder on Chalamayid. But of course there are exceptions. People at extenuating circumstances that were unable to launder before Chalamayid can launder on Chalamayid. For example, someone who returns from overseas, someone who was released from captivity, and someone who was released from jail, and similarly again, someone who was in excommunication and his ban of excommunication was lifted. If somebody made a neder not to launder his clothing, and then he was released from the neder, right, during Chalamayid, or mitpachos hayadayim, hand towels, or mitpachos hasaparim, or barber's cloths, which are the cloth that a barber puts around the person while he's giving haircuts. Remember again, as you saw in the last Mishnah, since there's a dispensation to give haircuts in certain circumstances, therefore halacha l'maisa, one would be permitted to launder the barber's cloths as well. Haz umitpachos hasfag. Psachos are like bath towels, towels that a person uses to go ahead and wash off after coming out of the bath, which absorb a lot of moisture. Hazavin va'zavos, hanidos va'yodos. Similarly, again, the clothing of Zavan and Zavos, who are people who experience emissions, Nida is a woman who is menstruating, Yoldos, a woman who has given birth, V'chala, these are obviously clothing which get dirty and need to be changed, therefore there's a dispensation to go ahead and launder them on Chalamayid. V'chala olim mituma latara. And similarly again, anyone who goes from a status of Tuma and to Tatara, right, from ritual impurity to purity on Chalamayid, and therefore a person has to also go ahead and launder and immerse their clothing. Hara elu mutar, and all of these are examples of where laundry on Chalamayid is permitted. Again, the common denominator is that these are all extenuating circumstances, as a result of which people weren't really able to launder their clothing before Chalamayid, and therefore could do so on Chalamayid. Ushar kol adam aser. However, again, in every other situation, halacha l'maisa, one is not permitted to go ahead and launder clothing on Chalamayid. This now brings us to Mishnah Gimel. Mishnah Gimel ve'elu kosim Moed. So remember again, under normal circumstances, you're not really supposed to write on Chalamayid either, as this is considered to be a non-essential malacha. However, again, for something that is a davar ha'ovid, something for which you may encounter a loss, you are permitted to go ahead and write on Chalamayid. So the Mishnah here now discusses cases of a davar ha'ovid. For example, kiddushay nashim. You can go ahead and write a shtar kiddushin, a document of betrothal. This is called a davar ha'ovid because if you don't betroth this woman now, maybe someone else will. Gitin, or a get, a divorce document, a concern if husband is willing to write it now, then perhaps again he's not going to be around later on. He's not going to be around later on to be able to write it, therefore we write it now. Shovrin are receipts. Let's say a person borrowed money. They want to repay the debt, but they want a receipt to indicate that they repaid the debt. You could write that. Daitiki. So Rashi says, the Bartanura says that daitiki ultimately, again, are the words of a shchibin. A person who was on his deathbed and wants to make a deathbed bequest. You could commit that to writing. Matana, or a document for a gift. Pruzbolin. Remember again, a pruzbol is a document which, if somebody lent money before Shemitah normally cancels debts. So remember again, a pruzbol is a document through which a person hands over the debts to the Beis Din, in which case it's still collectible even after Shemitah. Igros shum. So igros shum, the Bartanura explains, is where Beis Din made a valuation of a borrower's property to the lender, right? The lender wants to lend money, but he wants to make sure his debt is secured. So Beis Din evaluates the property of the borrower in order to make sure that there's something to secure the debt. Igros mazon. See, interestingly enough, igros mazon, Rashi explains here, are documents that Beis Din writes up. Let's say property is being sold off, estate property, to go ahead and sustain a widow or her daughters. So we could go ahead and evaluate and commit that valuation to writing on Chalamayid. Shtari Chalitza, a document of Chalitza. Woman didn't perform Yibum, instead she performed Chalitza. Umeunim, meunim is the process of miyun. Midrabanan, there is the ability for a mother or a brother to marry off a minor daughter, a minor girl. But when she reaches the age of majority, or really the truth is before she reaches the age of majority of adulthood, she has the ability to do miyun, which means she could refuse the relationship. And when she refuses the relationship, effectively the relationship dissolves. It dissolves. So halacha l'maisa, again, they would write a document to go ahead and solidify the fact that she refused this relationship. Ushtare beirurin. So shtare beirurin, interestingly enough, if two people have a court case, they write a document choosing their judges for the court case. Ugzeros bezdin. Gzeros bezdin means halachas, or I should say judicial rulings of a bezdin. Ve'igros shel roshos. Or again, if there are governmental decrees. So the idea over here is all of these are situations where either, again, if we don't write these documents, there's a potential loss, or if we don't write the documents, the person who kind of gives the command to write the document may not be available after Chol Hamoed, or again, other extenuating circumstances. So in a vacuum, we would avoid writing on Chol Hamoed unless, of course, there is a compelling reason to do so, or there was the inability to do so prior to Yom Tiv. All right, Shkach, everyone will stop over here. Wishing everyone a wonderful day.